Okay, we are live on another edition of the Edlow podcast. Subscribe. This is kind of an impromptu one that I just set up recently, and I'm really excited about this. I have two wonderful missionaries. Now, when you think about Mormon missionaries, you probably think about two guys riding bikes, white shirts, and ties, but that is not what I have here. I have sister missionaries. I have Sister Nuttall and Sister Taylor. Hello, sisters. Thanks for coming on the podcast.
Hello.
Okay, so um, first of all, I like I said, most of my unless you've the listener who's listening to this has had some I guess experience with the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, I would venture guess most people have no idea that there even are women who go on missions. Do you see that in your when you go out and you proselyte?
Yeah.
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 What is the general what is the general experience you have when someone first meets you?
Either they think that we're Jehovah's Witnesses and trying to force something on them, or they're confused and they listen to us for a little bit, but then reject us. But most of the time, they don't realize that there's sister missionaries for the Church of Jesus Christ. So.
Yeah. So, do you find that people are kind of pleasantly surprised, or do you think that how does that work?
Yeah, most of the time they're pleasantly surprised. Sometimes they don't care either way if we're girls or boys.
Right. So, it's interesting because I went on a mission many, many moons ago. And when I went on a mission, we had sister missionaries, but they were kind of far and few between. I mean, I served as a zone leader. And for those who aren't members of the church, that means I was kind of a missionary that kind of ran a certain section of the mission in conjunction with the mission president, who's generally, an older man and his wife. And there was probably maybe one set of sisters in each zone, because it was kind of rare. That was back at the time when sisters went at the age of 21. Now they can go as early as 19, right? Yeah. So tell me, how many sister missionaries are there in your mission?
I think just like around
Probably like 30.
Yeah, 30.
30. Okay. And how many, I mean, like, does each zone tend to have a couple sets of sisters or a few? How does that work?
Yeah. I think
Yeah.
there's normally two sets of sisters, if not one.
Oh, really? Okay. So it sounds like it's still kind of rare.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know how many missionaries there are total in your mission?
Yeah, there's 120.
100, that's it?
Yeah, it's kind of got a little smaller.
Wow. Okay. Well, so because it's more rare then, how do you guys, so Sister Nuttall, where are you from?
I'm from San Antonio, Texas.
Okay. And Sister Taylor, you're from where?
Idaho Falls, Idaho.
Okay. So, when you were going on your missions, what was the reaction to your family and then just the members of the church around you?
All very happy.
Yeah.
It's pretty rare for at least where I live for any sisters to go out at all. I was the first sister in I think 4 or 5 years that went on a mission in my ward. So.
Oh, wow. Oh, wow. And Sister Taylor, I got to imagine being in Idaho Falls, that I know the church is a little bit more, I guess, involved, or there's a larger membership out there. So probably more sisters went out in your area, I would imagine.
Yeah. It's just kind of more of a normal thing.
So tell me, sisters, tell me a little bit about your background. So, where are you? Like, tell me about your families. Where your families? Where are you at in the birth order? All that stuff.
Okay. Well, I'm the middle child and the only girl. I have an older brother and a younger brother. My older brother, he's 23. My younger brother is 17. And then, of course, I have a mom and a dad. My parents are both from Utah.
Mm,
I've moved around my entire life, so I'm not really originally from anywhere. But
mm.
I've lived in Texas the longest out of all the states I've lived in. So
Is that because is your dad military or like a traveling engineer or something?
no, it's kind of surprising. He just works for the finance department at medical schools. He's at
Mm.
UT Health right now. He's in the finance department. I don't remember the name of his position though.
Oh, okay. All right. And so he moves around quite a bit. What other cities have you lived in?
So I guess just to start from the beginning, I was born in New Jersey, and then we moved to another town in New Jersey. Then there was New Mexico, Arizona, Florida, Arkansas, and then Texas.
Wow. Interesting. So now most of those places I would gather the church is not um I guess particularly strong in a lot of those areas.
No, not a lot of members.
Yeah. So what's the farthest you ever had to drive to get to church?
Um, Probably just like 15 minutes. We usually lived pretty close to a church. My family tried to get us uh, close to good schools and churches, so not too far. But I think the furthest we've ever lived is like 15 minutes.
Oh, okay. The reason I ask is I served my mission in Indiana, and here in California, the church is actually pretty, it's pretty strong. There's a lot of members, and there were not in Indiana. There wasn't a temple in the state. There were seven stakes total in the state, and so I mean, there were some wards that I lived in that some members had to drive 30 to 40 minutes to get to church, and so in fact, I had my first area was a branch of 30 people. I mean, really small, right in the heart of the ghetto of Indianapolis. So it was definitely a culture shock for me. Coming out here, was it more of a culture shock for you?
Not really. I mean, I when it comes to like seeing all the members and how many people are at the church, it's definitely like, oh, it's a big ward, but not too much of a culture shock since I did move around a lot, so I've kind of gotten to know a lot of different kind of cultures when it comes to just the world and the church and stuff like that.
Yeah, okay. And then Sister Taylor, how about you? Were you born and raised in Idaho Falls?
Well, technically, I was born in Utah, but it was a whole situation. But yeah, rest of that, yeah, I was Idaho. I lived in Idaho. Like,
Okay. All right. Did your parents expect you to go on missions, or was this something you'd always planned on? Tell me your story of how you decided to go.
my parents, they didn't expect it. They were just supportive of whatever I chose to do, whether it was to go to school or go on a mission. But I wanted to go on a mission for quite a long time. Ever since like my uncle, he served a mission and would like write me letters while he was away. So I was like, that's kind of cool. And then my brother served missions, and then like going through like hard times in life and realizing that I couldn't have made it through without like the knowledge I have of Heavenly Father and Jesus Christ, because it would have been really hard. And
Mm.
that's just like something I wanted to help other people know they can do too.
Where are you at in the birth order?
I'm the youngest.
Oh, okay. You're the youngest, and how many kids?
I have two older brothers.
Oh, okay. All right. And then you kind of mentioned hard times. You don't have to talk about it, but if you, is it was there something specific that you were going through, or you just don't want to talk about that?
Oh, it doesn't matter. There's like a few things that were a little hard, just struggles, but I had a lot of like injuries that made it so I couldn't do different sport activities, which was big in the time, but now it's like it's okay. Wasn't gonna
Oh,
go
yeah.
pro, but it was just hard not being able to do that, and then other things happening too.
Mm. It's funny too when you go through trials like that. You, I know exactly what you're talking about. There are things that seem like such a big deal at the moment, and can be a real struggle. And then you look back 5, 10 years later, and you go, it really wasn't that big of a deal. And comparatively to what I'm going through now, or what I've been dealing with, it was a drop in the bucket. And so, specifically with the injuries, tell me how your testimony um, kind of helped you through that?
So I think the biggest one was, it was like I was doing track at the time, and the year before I wasn't able to finish the season because I had shin splints, and then this year I had gotten bronchitis, but I still continued to run, which isn't the greatest idea. And so speaking to a whole bunch of doctors trying to figure out things, and after I had bronchitis, it was harder to breathe, and I couldn't like pass breathing test. And so like we still don't know exactly what went wrong, but I trust that someday, maybe in the next life, it will be gone. I'll be able to run good again.
And are you, so when you say that, you mean do you have something going on that it's hard, even now it's hard for you to run?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I can't pass the breathing test for some reason, but the doctors don't know why.
Yeah. Wow. Interesting. That's interesting. And so, okay, so you you always wanted to go on a mission, right? Sister Nuttall, what about you? Did you also always want to go, or did something happen to make you want to go?
Kind of both. I wanted to go when I was younger, but that kind of faded away when I was around like 14-ish. But then my passion to want to go kind of came back around like 19 years old. So.
And can you give us an idea of what it was that spurred that?
Yeah. So at the time, I had a friend who was also wanting to go on a mission, and I hadn't really thought about it. I mean, I had, but I was kind of in my mind, I was like, I'm definitely not going to go on a mission because why would I spend a year and a half doing something that will probably be really hard? But when he was like, yeah, I'm going to go on a mission, I was just like, okay, well, I don't want to just be here alone. So I just started filling out papers just to kind of copy him and not be here without him. And then he and actually his family left the church. And
Oh, wow.
yeah, and then I had two other friends leave the church within the next couple months. And so I was kind of just spiraling with my testimony and everything. And I had filled out the mission papers, but I didn't turn them in yet. I didn't necessarily become inactive, but I think it was close to that point. And there was a general conference, and my parents just kept trying to bring me to church, and I would go once in a while. And then there was just a general conference where they were talking about how they need missionaries, and that if you are of the age that you should go. And that kind of just sparked my interest back, and being able to feel the Spirit at church again helped. And so that kind of made me want to go, just because they were asking for some, and because my testimony was just kind of in the gutter. So I knew that if I went on a mission, it would spark back up.
Interesting. So when you're listening to do you remember, was there a specific talk at that general conference?
There was, but I can't remember the name of it or the speaker.
Okay. So, but you listened to that talk, and tell me what you were feeling at that time.
Well, I was, in my mind, I was just like kind of brushing it off, but I kept hearing like missions, and if you're of the age you should go, and just sisters, we especially need you, just all those things I was hearing. I was just like, oh my gosh, no. I was just trying to get that out of my head, like brush it off, but they kept saying it, and there were other speakers who would say it once in a while, and so I was like, just the Spirit was like saying like, you gotta go, we thought you need to go. So I I sat there just like, dang, for a second, because I didn't want to, but I knew that I should. And so I was kind of feeling a little bit of like disappointment, but it's also like, I got to get myself back on track. So.
Yeah, interesting. So walk me through how this process between your friend who was going to go on his mission and then leaving. Did he actually go out and then leave the church, or did he leave before he went?
He filled out his papers, but never turned them in because he left.
Okay. And you said his whole family left?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. They
Okay.
The whole process of them leaving actually kind of started with their oldest out on a mission, and there was a random person who said something to their son, that made him kind of doubt his testimony. And the parents kind of, when he asked the parents, they started Googling things instead of looking up the answers in scriptures or asking church leaders. They were Googling. And that kind of put them down a rabbit hole of a lot of false things and really just bad things. And that's what kind of sparked them just like hating the church. And so they just kind of all followed the parents, and they all ended up leaving.
Yeah. So let me ask you a little bit about this. So I'm imagining, I mean, it sounds like this is a pretty close friend, right? Okay. So this friend, I'm imagining that you had some pretty serious conversations with this friend about these things that he was learning. And he probably showed you some of that stuff, right?
Yeah, there's and I'm his mom still to this day, after like I think 6 or 7 months after leaving, she's still posting a lot of anti stuff on social media.
So you're seeing all this, and I want to. The reason I ask is because you and your friend essentially saw the same stuff, right? I mean, you saw the same things, but he chose to leave and you chose your faith. What do you think was different about your experience that made you choose faith? I mean, because that's a huge difference, right? Like, you're both going to go on a mission. He is not going to church anymore. You're on a mission. I mean, not only are you all in at the church, but now you are all your time, all your talents, you're paying your own way to come and do this, because it's, you're not getting paid to do what you're doing. What do you think it was that made you choose faith over doubt?
I kind of had a strong testimony before any of that stuff happened, especially with like Joseph Smith and just little things that I gained a testimony of by going to girls' camp in EFY. And it kind of just, I'm kind of a stubborn person that when I know something or when I love something, I stick to it. And even though in my mind there were some doubts and I was not feeling great about it, I was just like, I've grown up in the church. I know most of the stuff is true, and I can't leave what I know, and I can't leave what feels like home, because it just felt like home whenever I went to church.
And tell me what you mean by that. What do you mean by it felt like home?
It just, even if it wasn't people that I always knew or people that I grew up with, it was always a family thing that I did. It was always with my parents, and I learned all this stuff from when I was younger, and all the music and all the teachings I just already knew. And it's hard to deny something that you've been taught all your life. And even if you've seen a couple of anti things or heard some things, they're not true. So it can't shake your testimony too much if you just have grown up with that and grown up with parents who really help you get that in your head.
Yeah. And you've been out a whopping 4 months, so you're old hat now at this. You obviously know what you're doing. So tell me, have you seen that? Have you seen your testimony grow?
Yes, very much so. Yeah.
Okay. So perhaps, and we'll start with Sister Taylor on this question. When you go and you knock on someone's door or you meet somebody for the first time, if they were to have a question about how they can develop this, what we call testimony, meaning a belief in what you're teaching, what are some things that you would recommend?
Well, there's 3 things, I guess. Is for sure going to church. Church is always a good place to learn and be around people who have beliefs that are good and can help you grow your own testimony. And then praying helps a lot. And then reading the scriptures.
Okay.
Mormon and Bible.
Awesome. And how about you, Sister Nuttall? What do you think?
Kind of just the same thing as her, just going to church, and you have to read the Book of Mormon and Bible and pray, because without doing those two, you're kind of just using a couple hours on Sunday to just go somewhere where you don't really seem to care to go, because if you're not doing the steps of reading the scriptures and praying, then you don't necessarily have a testimony. You have to do your own work to be able to feel that the Spirit and feel that it's right for you. You can't just go to church.
Sure. And what do you mean by work? Like, what are some things you mean? You're not talking like digging ditches, right? So what do you mean? What do you mean by work? Like just reading scriptures, or what do you mean?
Kind of just like doing your part, because Heavenly Father or God is going to help you with your testimony. He's going to help you and guide you throughout your whole life. All you need to do is your part, and kind of like if you're going to take a test, all you need to do is study for a little bit. It's nothing. It's not like you're going to be graded on it. It's not like you're going to spend the rest of your life trying to keep studying. You just have to do a little bit at a time, and that's kind of like your part.
Mm. So Sister Taylor, tell me, I know, so when I went on my mission, my mission story was a little different. I had no desire to go on a mission at all. My desire was to become a professional wrestler, and I was on my way to doing it. And then I had a friend as well who told me that she was never going to marry anyone who didn't go on a mission. And so I was like, well, then I guess I better go on a mission. So I jumped on, and but I had to leave some things behind. I mean, that was, I was on my way to becoming, I felt coming on my way to becoming a WWE wrestler and doing all that stuff. And, and 2 years away, I mean, 2 years away from that seemed like a lot. I got to imagine there are things that you guys had to put on hold to go on your mission. So Sister Taylor, perhaps you can tell us like what your plans or goals were that you kind of had to put on hold to come out here and do this.
Yeah, I guess nothing too crazy. Just gonna start school and start, I don't know, working towards a career.
Did you have something in mind that you wanted to do?
I did, but now it has changed. So I don't know for sure, but something in the medical field, I think.
Oh, wow. Okay, so wait, is that what you want to do now, or is that what you want to do then?
Before I wanted to do like occupational therapy.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
So what made you, is there something out here that made you change?
Just like talking to some members of the church about it, and like just I want to like help people in some way. I mean, I don't know. So I know occupational therapy is a great way to help people, but it just doesn't feel right anymore. So.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. No, the reason I bring that up is because I went on my mission and I ended up serving about 7 months in South Bend on Notre Dame campus. And there were a ton of members of the church who were going to the Notre Dame Law School. And I had some really great discussions with them. And I chose instead, I was like, instead of getting hit in the head with chairs, maybe I should probably go and do some schooling. And now I'm a lawyer. And if I hadn't gone on the mission, I don't know if I would have gone down that same path. And so it's interesting how going out and meeting people and talking with members can really change your trajectory.
Mm-hmm.
What about you, Sister Nuttall? What are you putting on hold? What were your plans if you didn't do this?
I was going to school before for about a year and a half before I was majoring in biology and sign language interpretation. And before I came on a mission, before I decided, I was wanting to try and get a certificate to be an EMT. And I was just kind of wanting to do something more with my life before I decided to go on a mission. And when I decided, I was a little bit like, oh, I can't do this yet. I'm going to have to wait a whole year and a half. But I think missions are a great way to like kind of clear your mind and know exactly what you want to do. Because I think if I started that then, I would not have been ready for that kind of thing. But I definitely want to keep studying biology and sign language interpretation, as well as getting a certificate to be an EMT.
Sure. Well, okay, so that's a good segue into kind of what I also want to talk to you guys about, and that is that I don't think, I've looked at at my life, and there were not more seminal, like transitional, or I guess more important years of my life than the 2 years I went on a mission. I just learned so much, and I don't know of any other place, maybe military. I just don't know where else you could get some of the lessons you learn on a mission. I mean, so let's talk a little bit about mission life. Talk about, you guys are together 24/7, right?
Yeah.
And that can be fun with the right person.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's talk about, mission life. I mean, I don't think people understand. You're literally within eyesight, short of, showering and bathroom. Like you're within eyesight 24/7 for 6 weeks or 3 months, even more sometimes, right? So walk us through like what mission life is like for you guys.
Oh no, it's kind of crazy sometimes, but there's some rules that are standards, I guess, we're expected to follow, like being with inside of a companion, unless we're like in interviews with our mission president, or we get to talk to our family once a week, so that's good. Or like you said, showering. But yeah, that's just little things, but it's mostly just to keep us unified and on the same page. And then we like wake up at 6:30 and then lights are out or is that 10:30?
Yeah,
So
man. And so your day, I gotta imagine your mission life is very similar to mine, and that your day is incredibly structured, right? So walk us through like a typical day for Sister Nuttall and Sister Taylor.
Okay. So like she said, waking up at 6:30, and then we have about like an hour and a half or so to just get ready and kind of just get going for the day, to be able to be in the right mindset and just be awake for the day. And we normally do our studies around like 8:30. We plan our day. We do personal study and companion study, and if we had lessons that day, then we would go to our lessons, or we would normally go out and go out in public or do some door knocking, and it's been pretty successful lately for us. But,
Yeah, I've seen you're bringing people to church every week. Yeah.
yeah.
That's really great. Well, that's the thing that was always so frustrating for me, because when I was in leadership, I used to tell everybody, because, like I said, sister missionaries were really rare. And in my mission, I believe it is so different now. Sister missionaries now are so even stronger than the sister missionaries in my era, because I think the 19 versus 21-year-old thing probably had a lot to do with it. And I think that also your generation is just so much more prepared for missions than mine was. There were a lot of crazy missionaries when I'm sure there still are, but I mean, like, there were a lot of crazy missionaries when I was doing that. But the sisters, it was like, if you had a good sister missionary, they out baptized the elders 2 to 1. I mean, they were like, they were just, I don't know if they were just less threatening, or it was just they were nice, they smiled, they all biked. Do you guys bike, or you guys have cars?
We did bike for about 6 weeks, but now we have a car.
Ah, okay. Yeah. Yeah, the sisters all biked in ours, and I just thought that was fascinating, bicycling in a dress. So I couldn't imagine it. But um so yeah, you got, and it's same thing here. Like, we've had great sets of missionaries that have come through our ward, but you guys like hit the ground running. Um what do you think it is that is sparring this success, other than, your sisters, and sisters are better than elders?
I think there's a couple of different things that can make it so that you just have a successful area. Is, first of all, just the ward. Oh, the ward is a huge part of it. Just uh, with whoever we bring to church or whoever we bring to activities and just have lessons with. If the ward is super welcoming and kind and will come with us to lessons and be very talkative and engaging in the lesson, that definitely is very helpful. And another thing is a thing that we say is obedience brings blessings, but exact obedience brings miracles. And the standards that she was talking about, if we are exactly obedient, not always going to be perfect with it, but if we try our best to be exactly obedient with all the standards, then we are going to see miracles. And we've seen lots of miracles lately.
Yeah. Yeah. So when you say exact obedience, give us a flavor, because like I said, there's a lot of people who are listening to this who are not members of the church, right? So they don't know what you mean. Like they're like, yeah, you got to get up at 6:30 and you got to look at this person every day. But like, what are some of the other things that you guys have to do that that is not your normal, typical 19-year-old female things to do?
So I guess one of the bigger ones that is different than most people our age is if we're on our phones, we have to be in the same room as each other. We have to be able to see each other's screens. And then only one of us gets a SIM card. And so we have to like have, they say, 4 eyes on one screen, or we have to be looking at each other's screen as we send messages just to make sure it's what we both want to say to these people that we're messaging.
Wow.
So that's one of the bigger differences, I'd say.
Yeah. We didn't have, this is gonna age me, but we didn't have cell phones. We didn't have emails or any of that stuff. So like I couldn't even imagine. I couldn't imagine doing thinking about all the trouble that some of the missionaries I knew got into. I could not imagine them having cell phones. Like there would have been some really, really funny, but really weird stories coming out of that. So, so that's one. Talk to me a little bit about like I think one of the things that's so interesting about a mission, having served one, is no TV, no radio, I mean, you're not allowed to be within arm's length of someone of the opposite sex, so no dating, right? There's no, you're not supposed to really be having any like, yeah, I mean, there's no, I guess, no outside media really. That's still the same, right?
Kind of. We're allowed to have Facebook to do kind of like Facebook finding, as we call it.
Sure.
So, but with that, we can't follow anyone except for church accounts, and we can only post about like, I mean, we can post about like birthdays and stuff like that, but we normally only post about like church-related things, and we can't like scroll on Facebook. We kind of have to just be on there for a specific purpose and then get off.
I see. Okay. So, man, that's pretty hardcore. I mean, but I mean, you have to be, right? Because like I said, I mean, there can be a lot of things that can get in the way. That I think what's important for people to know when you're on a mission is that your mission, you are 24/7 a representative of Jesus Christ, right? Those name tags you're wearing right there say his name on them. So, your focus is 100% of the time on spiritual things. And, it's hard to do that when you're scrolling through and watching recent things, whoever, Nicki Minaj or whoever did. It's not going to make it, that's not going to help so much. So when you say exact obedience, what do you mean by that? Either one of you.
Yeah, just following the rules like they're told to us.
Yeah. There's a lot of like little things that a lot of missionaries see. There's no reason to follow it, or it's dumb or something like that. Like having to announce what app you're going on if you're going on your phone, or having to be in sight and sound of your companion. Just little things like that don't seem like a big deal. If you follow exactly those, then there will be miracles, and it's been proven. We've seen miracles as exactly obedient.
Yeah. So tell me, what do you think? Give me an example of a miracle that you think has come due to exact obedience.
I guess just in this area, she was not here yet. I had a different companion, but with our one of our newest members, Catherine,
Yeah.
She was super ready and super excited to learn and hear about the gospel, and
Mm.
she got baptized in a month just because of how ready she was. And I don't think missionaries who were not exactly obedient or who were not really caring about the rules as much would have been blessed with her.
Mm. Yeah. I used to tell a story that I heard my mission president share at a zone conference, because there was one missionary in our mission who was definitely not anywhere near exactly obedient, but he was incredibly charismatic. Um, and he, at one point in his mission, one area, for whatever reason, in our mission, the goal was to get one baptism a month. And that, I mean, every mission's different, but that was, if you could do that, you were really successful. It was hard. You go to somewhere in South America and you have like 40 a week, but here in Indiana, it was hard. But he had, I think, one month, he had 7 or 8 baptisms in a month. And so, he was sitting with the mission president, and then he said to the mission president, he goes, well, obviously my obedience has nothing to do with the baptisms, because look, I had 8 baptisms. And he said something that it was very profound. He said, there are some members out there, or some people out there, who are just ready. And it doesn't matter who it is. It doesn't matter what you do. They were ready to hear the gospel, and they're going to get baptized, no matter who it is. But there are also those people who you have a specific talent. You were specifically put there to teach. And if you are obedient, you can have an effect on them, and if they're going to get, whether, on their spiritual journey or not. And that really stuck with me, because I remember thinking, I had my first baptism on my mission, my first area, like I said, 30 members. We met on the 3rd story of an office building. Most of them were brand new. In the last year or two, they had to bring in other priesthood from other wards, because there just wasn't enough to keep it going. And when I got there, I mean, we're talking like it was the ghettoist area of Indianapolis. And I remember asking my companion, I was like, so how often do you baptize here? And he's like, there hasn't been a baptism in this area for 5 years. And he goes, well, I take that back. We had a baptism 2 months ago, but he got arrested and put in juvenile hall before we could confirm him. And I was like, okay. And so we went about 3 months knocking on doors, because there just weren't any referrals. There weren't any members to give them to us. So we were just knocking on doors every single day for 3 months, with very, 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 very little success. And finally, on the last day we were together, we fasted all day and knocked on doors all day. And we ran into George and Marcia Fisher. And my companion got transferred out, and I stayed for another 4.5 months. And my first Christmas Eve, they were both in their 70s, and they got baptized on Christmas Eve. They were the first baptisms in 5 years. And like, pretty good Christmas. You know what I mean? And so I firmly believe that what you're saying is true, that exact obedience to mission rules, even if they do seem silly. Like, I always felt so silly with the backing the car rule, if you guys still have that. I'm sure you do. But for those who haven't been on missions, one of the companion who's not driving is supposed to stand behind the car and lead them out so they don't ding anything, which in the age of backup cameras, I think, is a little overkill. But you still have to do that?
Yeah.
Okay. So anyway, now I have to also address, I have a bone to pick with you guys, though. This calling your parents every week thing. Okay. Now I only got 2 a year. Okay. I had Mother's Day and Christmas. Do you think, and I have thought about this a lot. First of all, when it first happened, I was telling the elders, I was like, you guys are weak. You guys are weak sauce. Have to call your mommies every week. But I wonder, Do you think that is more helpful for you, being able to talk it to your parents?
Mhm.
Yeah. Okay. Like, why is that?
Um,
Let me back it up, because I just wonder, in my time, if that would have been harder for me to be like seeing them every week, talking to them about the things that are going on at home. If that would make it harder than just getting a letter every once in a while. So tell me, do you think it makes it easier?
um, for me, it does. I did not live without my parents before my mission,
Oh,
so I think it kind of depends on the missionary. But for me, it's just being able to feel. I mean, I get support from my companion. I get support from other missionaries throughout my mission, so that helps. But knowing that I just also have support at home and I get to see and feel it every week, it definitely helps me be able to just keep going and know that even when I'm done with my mission, that I'll still have love and support. So I feel like just for me, it's just all about being able to feel and see that I'm still being missed. I'm still loved at home, and they're not having too much fun without me.
nice. How about you, Sister Taylor? Do you think it's helpful?
Yeah, for sure. I'm more of a homebody, I guess. I love being home, and so I just don't know if I'd make it too long out here. Especially, I've had some harder companions, and just knowing I can talk to my parents on Monday is what helped me get through some weeks. With someone to
Yeah,
talk to that knows me. So,
that's interesting. So when you say you had harder companions, do you feel like, because I know in my mission there were some missionaries who, for whatever reason, the mission president just trusted with certain companions that maybe had mental health issues or struggled, or do you feel like you're doomed to be that person, or
yeah,
not a comment on Sister Nuttall at all, by the way. We're not saying. I'm sure this is a break for you. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, but you that kind of, so so okay, I'm gonna ask a I'm gonna ask should I ask this question? I'm gonna ask anyway. Okay, what's the funniest, craziest thing that one of your companions has ever done?
Mm.
It's okay to say no comment if you want to. We're not gonna push.
uh, I don't know. I think the only thing that was, I don't know. Just some things. I guess I grew up with brothers, so I'm not used to having a girl. I guess not her. She's great, but like the companions that had a harder time were a little bit more moodier. So I'm just not used to how to handle it. But it's nothing too crazy. I guess.
Oh, I didn't even think about that. I have two daughters that are teenagers, and having to be around them 24 hours a day. Whew. Yeah, that would be tough. So what about you, Sister Nuttall? You've had generally pretty good. You've only been out 4 months, so you've only had like two, right? So you feel like your experience has been pretty good so far?
Yeah, it's definitely been pretty good. I mean, I can't really say that I've had any hard companions because I've only had two and they were not hard to deal with. But the I think it depends on the area and just the ward. But I feel like the craziest thing, kind of like she said, I grew up with brothers, so there'd be some sisters who would like want to borrow clothes or want to just borrow little things, and I'm like, that's kind of weird. Like, I don't want you wearing my stuff, but not too crazy.
I think that's the thing that's so interesting about being on a mission, is that even though, like, I had a couple of companions where I'm convinced I could have served the entire 2 years with them and been totally fine. But even then, you'd have moments where you're like, I'm gonna kill this person. You know what I mean? Like, if I have to look at your face for 5 more minutes, I'm gonna lose my mind. I mean, like, it's just because you're there, it's 24/7. You can't be around anybody that long without losing it every now and again. But that learns patience, right? So, now let's shift gears to something a little more spiritual, and let's talk about what's the one thing you think that, like, if your mission ended today, what would be the one thing that you think you would take home with you as the best lesson learned?
I think that just the church changes people's lives, and because I've seen it so many times that people like struggle hard with like either it's like mental health issues or like addictions or anything, that once they start learning more about the church and learn to turn to God in those times, that it can bless their life in ways you can't imagine. And also that prayer works. Like in the hardest times, that prayer's the thing you can turn to, and eventually it will help you get out of it.
Wow. Yeah. How about you, Sister Nuttall?
I think echoing her a little bit, that prayer definitely works. It's probably easier to say that as a missionary just because we do it so often.
Yeah.
But prayer definitely works. And I think just patience and it's just easier to be kind once you've had to deal with a lot of stuff that you never thought you'd have to deal with. So just I would definitely be able to just be more kind and patient, and knowing that prayer works is definitely a huge thing. But just those little things that would probably make life a lot easier.
Yeah. Sister Taylor, I'm sure Sister Nuttall, you haven't done this yet, but Sister Taylor, have you trained a new missionary before?
Yeah.
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 How was that experience for you?
Well, it's kind of an interesting one because it was a weird transfer because my companion was going home 3 weeks early for a family reunion, and so they put me in a trio with the trainee, I guess, the new missionary, for the last 2 weeks of the transfer. But it was really good. She was already like pretty ready to start teaching and work. So.
Oh, nice. Yeah. I did that 4 times. I trained 4 new missionaries. I trained one while I was a zone leader, and I always found that to be the hardest but most rewarding experience because I mean I had some interesting ones, but the good ones, uh, to watch their testimony grow and watch them develop into great missionaries was really exciting. And then to see them later on down the road, like one of my proudest moments was when one of my trainees ended up training somebody else and seeing kind of like I guess like a posterity situation of, seeing all of these people, seeing him go out there and do that. And I still talk to him. He's a great guy. He's a chiropractor. I won't hold that against him. But like, yeah, so it's really fun. Well, so tell me now, what would you want if somebody's listening to this podcast and then tomorrow a set of missionaries knocks on the door, what would you want those people to know about those missionaries who they're answering the door for?
I guess just the first thing is just to hear them out, just to not shut them down just because they look a little bit weird or because they have a tag. Just to know that even if you're not super interested in that moment, just to hear them out, because they do have an incredibly important message that could possibly change your life for the better. So I just would say just hear them out and maybe even just let them share a scripture with you, just something little like that.
Yeah. What do you think, Sister Taylor?
Yeah, I just like she said, hear them out and realize that we're young, we're not too old, we don't have too much life experience, but just to hear them out and give them a chance.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think what's important for people to remember is that nobody's ever going to force you to come to church or get baptized. They're not going to bother you. If you ever, I used to tell people all the time, like, look, you don't want me to come back, you just say so, and I won't come back. I think that they've had experiences with people from other churches who are kind of pushy, and so they're like worried that you're just never going to leave them alone. But the thing is that the messages that you share, even if it's something that they're not going to, they don't want to pursue or anything like that, they're worthwhile sentiments to hear. So tell me, like, what are your plans? I mean, Sister, I know you guys probably don't want to think about this too much, but what is your plan when you go back? Other than bring your friend back to church, Sister Nuttall. Other than that, like, what are your plans to? What are your plans to pursue?
Yeah, I think mine just is to go to BYU, Idaho, and start school.
And you said you wanted to do something in the medical field, right?
hmm
Like do you want to be a doctor or a nurse, or do you don't have any idea?
I was thinking like a surgical tech, but I need to look into it more. But currently, don't have the means to do that.
Okay, all right. So, do they have a surgical tech thing at BYU, Idaho?
That's the part I need to look into, I
Need to
guess.
look into. Yeah, you'll get there. You'll get there. Okay. How about you? You still rocking the EMT situation, Sister Nuttall, or are you gonna do something different?
Right now, I think I probably would still try and do that. But I do want to continue going to school. I've thought about either BYU Pathways or BYU Idaho as well. But I haven't decided, and I still have a while to go, so I'm not super super just thinking about it. But just EMT probably, yeah.
Yeah, I would recommend, just as somebody who did what you're doing, one of the things that I found so interesting was when I went into members' homes, because neither one of my parents finished college, so I knew I wanted to go to school. I just didn't really know necessarily what for. And but I always loved going into members' homes, and when the husband or wife said what they do, just kind of picking their brains and what their day was like and how they got there and what they had to do, and whether they enjoyed it, that helped me figure out that law school was what I wanted to do. And so, just, yeah, maybe, who knows, maybe you'll run into a member who does something really interesting, and then you'll like completely change and become something completely different. So, um, so now what do you hope happens from here? You're going to be in this area for a little while together. So what do you hope happens in your area, other than like a ton of baptisms? Like, what do you hope? What would you hope from like members of the ward? What would you hope from members of your stake? What are some things that you'd like to see?
I think one of the biggest things is just to have more board activities to invite people to, and to just be able to grow our teaching pool, which is just the people we're teaching. Be able to grow that, whether or not anyone is put on date to be baptized, or even if it's a very slow progression with most people, just to grow that like teaching pool, and to be able to have activities and just other things to invite them to is like one of the biggest things that really does help. So I think I would just want to see that and start stuff like that.
Mm. And what you have any other thoughts, Sister Taylor?
No, that about the same thing. Just I think the most important job we have is just to share the gospel with other people, whether it's just to get a little interaction or they want to learn more. It's all good.
So if someone is listening to this podcast who is thinking about possibly investigating the church, or even maybe not the church, but are searching for something, what would you say to that person?
I think just reach out to the missionaries and listen and ask their questions to them. And if they don't answer them the right way, or maybe not to their liking, there's a lot of resources out there. There's the churches on Facebook and Instagram and YouTube, and there's even a church website that they can go to find answers or things to help them. And also the scriptures, they're always a good way to find answers.
Yeah. You can request a free Book of Mormon if you want. They're always going to be free to anyone who wants one.
Awesome. Um, so, okay, a couple of questions that I ask every person who comes on the podcast. So I'm going to ask you some really, really hard-hitting ones. Okay, you ready? All right. So, what would you consider at this point would be your greatest success in life?
Uh, I think just the fact that I'm still close with my whole family, my siblings
Hmm.
and my parents. I'm still very close to them as I always was. And at least a lot of kids that I know, even like in high school, weren't close with a lot of their siblings or parents. So the fact that I'm still close with my whole family is a huge success in my mind.
Yeah. Did your older brother go on a mission?
hmm
He did. Okay. So you had that example.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then Sister Taylor, you had some older siblings. Did they go on missions?
hmm
Yeah. Okay. Cool. So how about you, Sister Taylor? What do you find to be your biggest success so far?
I don't know. I think just still building on a testimony, like not giving up and just keeping trying to build
Mhm.
testimony and to help others.
Yeah. Tell me real quick, guys, about that. What what is your testimony about?
Um, I think mainly it's just knowing for sure that Heavenly Father and Jesus Christ are 100% real, and they may not be with us on earth, but they are real people and they have bodies, and that the Holy Ghost does comfort and he does lead us and guide us, and that Joseph Smith is and was a true prophet, and everything he suffered for, or everything he suffered through, and he went through just to bring back the restored gospel, just shows that how true it is and how important it is in our lives.
How about you, Sister Taylor?
It's quite similar to, but I think just add on is that I know that the church can bring so much lasting joy and pure joy that nothing else in the world can. Like there's a lot of things that seem super fun and can bring joy, but the only thing that has brought lasting joy, at least in my life, is through the gospel and living the principles of it, and having that knowledge too, that have someone to turn to, Heavenly
Yeah.
Father and Jesus Christ.
Yeah. So next question is, what would you say is your biggest failure and what did you learn from it?
Oh man, uh, there's been a lot. I'm just kidding. Um,
No, that's okay. You know what? Here's the reason why I asked this question. Some people might wonder why I ask everybody this question. One, because it's always fun to hear what people consider to be failures. I've heard a whole bunch of different things, but failure is where you learn. Like it's okay to fail. In fact, you should fail. If you're not failing, you're not trying. I mean, everybody I know, I mean, I failed a ton of times before I became successful. I mean, you learn so much about yourself on how you respond to failure and what you learn from that. I mean, that's the whole concept of the atonement and repentance, right? You mess up, you feel terrible, you have to make amends, you get forgiven, you try again. That's how we learn and grow. So that's why I ask, what would you say is your biggest failure, and what did you take away from it?
um, I would say for me, especially with my friend who was going to go on a mission, but then decided to leave. When he first told me that he wanted to go on a mission, it was very scary and hard for me because I knew that that would mean I'd be just kind of at home alone, not being able to talk to him for 2 years. And so I was pretty mad at first, and I tried to discourage him to not go. And just even a couple days later, I apologized and was like, "You should go, and it's a good thing." But I majorly regretted doing that, and now being on a mission, realize how important it is. and how just amazing it is with all the life skills that you learn and the testimony grow. And so I try to not think of it like this, but I do think that if I did help him and encourage him a little bit more, he probably would have gone. But at the same time, agents, like, he can choose for himself. So I know it's not my fault, but just something like that, I definitely would consider to be my biggest failure.
Interesting. Yeah. That's it. That's pretty heavy. But the thing is, though, is you're exactly right. You can't put that on yourself. You didn't do that. I mean, did you think that, like, what I mean, think about it. It could have been even worse if he had gone out on a mission and then he learned all this stuff and then left. It could have even been worse, right? So I would tell you, just in my own experience, not knowing anything about the situation other than what you've told me in this last podcast, I would venture to guess that maybe that all needed to happen to get you out, you know? And so there are no coincidences in the gospel. So how about you, Sister Taylor? What's your big failure? I mean, following that, good luck. But
Someone told me that you don't fail unless you quit trying. But I think before the mission, I had some friends that were members of the church, and they'd say little things about it, but weren't like directly asking questions. But I wish I would have spoke up and told them about it. But I was like too scared to ruin the friendship because I didn't want to force anything on them. But I think being a missionary has helped me to learn that you're not forcing it, you're just inviting or sharing something that matters a lot to you. So I wish I would have told them.
do you think that now, being a missionary, next time you have that situation, you're going to be more apt to open your mouth a little more and invite a little more?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So I would just encourage both of you to hang on to that as long as you can, because it's very easy. It's very easy. I remember when I was on my mission, looking at members, especially towards the end, I got a little cranky towards the end, and so at the end, I'd just be like, look at these members who aren't doing their well, it's home teaching back then, but not doing their ministering. They never go on exchanges with us. They never take us. It's like, I'm not going to be that missionary. I'm not going to be that member and all that stuff. And the next thing you know, life gets in the way, and then you're like, I haven't done my ministering in a few months. That's interesting. So hang on to that as long as you can. So really quick before we end, I want to ask, you mentioned at some point, you mentioned the Holy Ghost or the Holy Spirit, and it feeling that and it testifying to you and assisting with your testimony. Can you give an experience maybe where you, in your life, where you really felt the influence of the Holy Spirit?
Yeah. I guess the biggest time I can remember is coming back to church after like 1 or 2 or 3 maybe Sundays of not going. One of my favorite hymns or songs is called Praise to the Man. And during the whole, just while we were singing and while we were doing the opening prayer and all that, I noticed that was one of the hymns that they were singing. And it was my first time coming back in a couple Sundays. And so I was like, oh, that's kind of exciting. Get to hear that song. And that song is at the end of the Joseph Smith Restoration movie. But while listening to that song and singing it and hearing the line, millions shall know Brother Joseph again, and just knowing that was another way of saying missionaries and missionary work, like you tell others about Joseph Smith. That was the first time in a while that I was able to feel the Holy Ghost, and the first time I was able to feel him kind of testifying to me that Joseph Smith was a true prophet and that you were where you're supposed to be. And I was kind of just feeling a lot of love and comfort from that. And that's kind of where the home feeling came from.
Nice. How about you, Sister Taylor?
Oh, there's been so many times, but I think one of the neatest experiences I had on a mission was actually my first lesson in the mission field. I was on exchanges with another sister, but they had been teaching this guy for quite a while, I think, and he was like about to like say that he didn't want to be taught anymore, but he was gonna give him one more chance, and I happened to be there on that last chance. But I don't remember like all what we talked about in the lesson, but I just remember that the spirit was so strong there, and like I only got to say like two things because we had someone there that was over talking us, but it happened to be that something that was said that he had felt a few days before that he had this feeling, and that's why he agreed to meet with the missionaries again. And then someone said something about how they felt at something, and he eventually joined the church just a few weeks after that. And so it was really a neat experience.
Yeah, that's awesome. Wow. So, from these experiences, I guess, well, we'll just move on and let me ask you about you. I always ask this question at the end, but you guys are a lot younger than some of the people you usually talk to, but still. So at some point later on down the road, you're going to pass away, right? And you're going to have a funeral and you're going to have the eulogy. What's one thing you hope somebody says in your eulogy?
I think for me, just to know that I made a difference in someone's life other than just being a missionary, just knowing that I helped change someone's life, even just from a little thing. Because, I mean, who doesn't want to change someone's life for the better? So,
Yeah.
Yeah, I think mine's probably about the same. That I help at least one person for the better.
Yeah. Well, I know that, what you're doing out there in the mission field, you are changing people's lives for the better. And the thing that I've also learned that you're not going to know the impact you're going to have on somebody until years and years later. Some people you'll never even know. You'll never even hear about it. I know that there are many, many people in my life who had a significant impact and just have no idea. They just have no idea. And, I don't doubt that there's somebody out there who you've ran into, said an encouraging word at a really difficult time, you know? And so I know that's true. So, well, I thank you for coming on. Thank you for having, having the courage to go out on a mission. It's a hard road. It can be, it is not easy. I don't think people understand how difficult the life of a missionary can be. There's a lot of fun. There's a lot of great experiences. There's also a lot of hardship. You guys are rejected probably more than anybody ever. I mean, right? Like you get really used to doors slammed in your face, you know? And so I commend you guys for being willing to go out there and do that. And so for those who are listening, I appreciate you listening. Subscribe to the podcast. We got a bunch of fun stuff coming up. I got a gun expert coming on next. A self-defense expert with guns. He's going to tell you how you can kill somebody without getting in trouble. And then I have a bunch of other people coming on. So yeah, that's great. Again, sisters, I appreciate you very much for the work that you do, and I'm proud of. I get a chance to work with you as part of the Word Mission, and you guys are just doing a great job. And so keep doing what you're doing. Okay.
Thank you.
thank you.
All right. We'll see y'all later.